This video will be about firearms, kind of. It's mostly about pellet guns and what we call BB guns. Guns that fire objects using compressed air or a spring. Warning, in some countries, people will call a shotgun that fires lethal rounds a pellet gun because it fires pellets. Lost in the translation. 1934, the National Firearms Act made rules and definitions for suppressors, short-barrel rifles, short-barrel shotguns or sawed-off shotguns, etc. Gun Control Act of 1968 required serial numbers on new firearms, but that's ones manufactured, not personally made. Banned mail-order firearms sales, but that's for the lower receive. All other parts for a gun, except that one part that has a serial number on it, are perfectly acceptable. And prohibited interstate gun sales, depending on. Then there's the 1986 Hughes Amendment that made it illegal for civilians to own any machine guns made after that date. With some exceptions, obviously. 1988, number 15 U.S.C, weird symbol, 5001 GII, no state shall prohibit the sale of traditional BB or pellet gun or paintball guns or air guns that expel a projectile through the force of air pressure, except for prohibiting sale to minors. Other than that, they're not allowed to restrict them because it was considered excessive to do so, and people decided to actively make a rule against it. Simply because, even in the 80s, people decided that BB guns and pellet guns and air rifles and whatever else you can come up with, if it's not really a firearm, should not be prohibited outright. It has to be, effectively you can prohibit it, but you still have to have some wiggle room somewhere, right? 2012, the Consumer Product Safety Commission decided to define BB gun muzzle velocities over 350 feet per second as high velocity or high power. They also stated in the same breath, it seems, pellet rifles and BB guns cause 4 deaths per year, and also included that warnings that should be added to when you buy them. Let's say it's potentially lethal or dangerous or deadly, depending on which way they want to soft pedal it, out to 350 yards. Remember that a gun, whether you aim it or not, can be lethal at some range. Whether you can aim it accurately on a target or miss it entirely and hit something you didn't mean to hit is its effective range that you can aim and hit what you're aiming at. Guns, no matter how irrationally bad they are after they've been screwed up, damaged, worn out, or aged too much or not taken care of, can still be lethal at to an extreme range. You just can't predict where they hit necessarily. But 350 yards with 4 deaths a year claimed back in 2012. They didn't specify whether it was kids. And when they talk about imitation firearms, they overtly don't tell you that the majority of people who are actually harmed when they're holding a toy gun that looks real and get shot by mistake, they're grown-ups. Most of the time, it's not children. When children are killed or harmed in any way, it's a tragedy. But when people explicitly exclude where they're getting, what's the age range of the people being shot or hurt, either by a BB gun or someone mistaking it for a real one and shooting them, they leave out the age. And remember, it says 4 people per year in 2012, on average, were killed because it was caused by a BB gun in some way, or pellet gun, or paintball gun, or anything. I have suspicions. A BB can penetrate 10% ballistic gel at around 3 inches. It's actually 3.34 if you want to be really precise about something that has a ton of slop factor here. That's from a foot away or so. They also don't specify how far away you have to be. I was looking up what's the distance you have to be away from ballistic gel to have a BB gun do it. But that has to be done at a speed of 590 feet per second, or conventionally 600 feet per second will get you 3 inches of depth in ballistic gel that's emulating human tissue. And then people say, well, that's not true. Yes, it is. At the 5 minute mark, I'm going to tell you that ballistic gel, the FBI 10% ballistic gel standard that they use, because it is the 10%, is actually emulating human flesh. And if you do 20% ballistic gel, it emulates dried hard flesh. That's literally it. And again, they want 3-inch depth for both. Why? Because that's the depth the BB pellet will go into flesh. They also tested this with rifle rounds and pistol rounds and found that the amount of depth you get with fat, meat, and such from freshly slaughtered animals, and also just looking at wounds that they get when they're being hunted, that matches the ballistic gel. Ballistic gel does emulate animal tissue, human tissue, live at body temperature. Ballistic gel, however, to do that has to be brought, if it's real ballistic gelatin, to really low temperatures, like 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Just a little, it's not near body temperature. Now you can get artificial ballistic gel that emulates the animal gelatin-based stuff that works at body temperature and really does emulate human flesh. But again, we're getting further and further away from, this is to estimate depth of penetration in an abdomen. Yeah, that's actually what it's for. If you actually look this up, this is like people saying the 21-foot rule or 7-yard rule. It's not. It was something that was observed under very specific conditions. So, if a BB only goes about 3 inches in at 600 feet per second from this far away, that's actually, what you see people do for FBI testing. They'll get that far away, or they'll get a meter away, but nobody ever set the specification because it doesn't lose speed very much in 6 feet. It doesn't. It's not running into that much air resistance. So 600 feet per second is 600 feet per second within like 2 meters. No, it's not. Well, yeah, I know it's not, but it's close enough. Anyway, it gets about 3 inches, 3¼ inches into the ballistic gel, but it can be less than that. And saying that someone 350 yards away from a BB gun that's going damn near half that speed can cause a death. So, the Consumer Product Safety Commission decided to define any BB gun that had a muzzle velocity of 350 feet per second as high velocity or high power. And yes, you can get BB guns. I looked them up for $40. They break. You have to you buy them as a kit and replace everything that's going to break. Just assume it's going to break the buttstock off or the shoulder stock. But yeah, for $40 you can get a BB gun that can fire pellets, and it's basically a pellet gun that allows BBs, and that's when you get 600 feet per second. BB guns that are spring-loaded are 350 limited. Well, it's a certain number of foot-pounds and blah, blah, blah. I don't care. We're talking about actually how far it'll go in to do damage in an abdomen. That's what these are based on. So 4 people being killed per year back in 2012 is the claim. And then when you look it up, what, by the way, I actually did, you find out it's anecdotal listings from various police stations about grown-ups using BB guns and pellet guns in armed robberies and getting shot because they were pointing a gun-shaped item at a clerk at a 7-Eleven or something. For that entire year, it was all 4 of them. There are cases, every year we hear about a kid dying from a BB gun or a pellet gun. I know that. Well, actually, no, it's not every year. Some years you get a rash of them. New Jersey and Rhode Island redefined BB guns, pellet guns, anything that's not run off of propellant, as firearms. They just decided they were going to do that. Firearm literally means that it uses propellant. And legally speaking, a firearm has to be not an antiquated thing like a muzzle loader or a flintlock. Those can be qualified as being firearms for logical reasons, but legally speaking, they're not regulated the same way and shouldn't be. Anyway, Rhode Island and New Jersey redefined a plastic pellet coming out of a toy gun that's spring-powered or Nerf gun as being a firearm. And I'm not kidding. Unless you get a special waiver, even a Nerf gun, if you make a new version, it's considered a firearm and they regulate it like a 50 BMG. They treat it the same way. Illinois and Michigan can redefine these same things as firearms if they are over 19 caliber or .19 inch in bore diameter and or they go over 700 feet per second, which is the upper limit for most cheap pellet guns. Connecticut, Delaware, North Dakota, they can call these things dangerous weapons, but they won't call them firearms. A dangerous weapon makes sense, and I agree at 700 feet per second and almost 20 caliber if it's throwing metal, but other countries and other jurisdictions will say it has to have a certain number of foot-pounds and or it has to be able to actually do damage. The ones that talk about doing a meat target test or, body temperature meat, or using ballistic gel at the 40 degrees Fahrenheit so that it emulates 98.6 flesh. Okay, fine. The District of Columbia, Florida, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New York, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Virginia may age restrict anything that's not a firearm if it has a firearm-like shape, because it might be confused, and or it can do damage. And the main thing that gets damage is you get a puncture in the neck, and it gets in the blood vessel in the neck. There's several of them, or in the thigh, or in the arms, or in the eye socket, and ultimately causes death, usually through infection. But again, the majority of the ones that are being referred to by the Consumer Product Safety Commission while talking about children were grown-ups that were robbing a liquor store and got killed for at least 1 or 2 years. I'm not going to bring up all the data because I'm seeing conflicting data from them. They can't even get their story straight. So, okay, let's continue. So what is the takeaway for BB guns and pellet guns? Now, I'm also working this up because I want to find out what cities, counties, and states can I or can I not have transfer through, I mentioned the Gun Control Act, of non-firearms when a state wants to treat them as a firearm or treat them as regulated or put you on a hot list or a red list or, a red flag list or a list. I want to avoid this shit. So here's my listing. Make sure people are over 18 when they do anything involving anything even marginally presumed to maybe be kind of like a firearm. Keep it under 18 caliber. Just do it. Definitely keep it under 18 caliber. Don't get it anywhere near 20 caliber. Keep it under 700 feet per second, so 699 feet per second. If you're in Connecticut, Delaware, North Dakota, Washington, D.C., Florida, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New York, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. And leave New Jersey and Rhode Island, and etc. If they have much more constringent things like Illinois and Michigan, because they can choose to define something as a firearm when it isn't. See also redefining something as a machine gun when it's a drawing, because the ATF did that. And it wasn't to scale, so it could not be used to make a machine gun, and they even kind of admitted that they couldn't make it work as a machine gun because it wasn't to scale. Anywho, ballistic gel test video that ends in H8W. 4-inch deep at 10 pumps, 3-inch deep at 5 pumps. 10 pumps is the maximum. 4-inch depth. Can that cause, obviously, if you hit the abdomen and it punctures something like a blood vessel, it can hurt somebody very badly. If somebody's really skinny, if you're a fat man like me, well, I'm getting skinnier now because of lack of food. I need to go get a snack. That would definitely potentially kill people. Okay. A .22 caliber is lethal out to its max aimable range at 400 yards. Almost the perfect firearm because the maximum range you could basically deliberately hit something is also the maximum range it's lethal. It's probably much more lethal beyond that too. It's lethal much further than that, but you get the idea. 12 gauges, 300-yard lethal range, and more. Practical limit is anywhere from 100 to 200 yards depending on the shooter and the cartridge. For instance, a cut shell or a wax slug may not work at 100 yards, but a real slug, factory made, will work out to 230 yards or 200 yards depending on the shooter. But missing and hitting something at 300 yards is just as likely. Meanwhile, buckshot and birdshot are way shorter, 50 yards up to 100. Unless you make the birdshot into a wax slug, then you get the idea. And bringing up that these are both the exceptions to almost every firearms rule in the United States for being regulatable. Break action 12 gauge and a single shot 22. Even semi-autos are allowed in some countries. But those countries also somehow have an extreme bugaboo about BB guns. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck.